Hello and welcome to Gierok Farms. This is part 2 of mounting the corn picker. We are currently on our way down to our other shed where the corn picker is stored. In part 1, we got the tractor ready, put the mounts on and things like that. If you want to see that, I'll throw a link up in the top right corner. You can click on that and go and watch part 1 so you have an idea of what took place before we can actually put the picker on. But anyway, hope you all enjoy the video. Let's get to work. Okay, so we're down to the other shed. We got the tractor all ready, and now we're gonna mount the back half of the picker first. But we're also gonna take advantage of it being off and grease some bearings up. Look it over a little bit, yeah. Easier to get at everything. That wouldn't be too bad. This one we can maybe give a little bit there, if we got any left. Okay, right there, tighten. I guess he'd be all right. You don't want these long chains too tight. So now these here slide into these holes here. And that's how that all locks that into place. And then you got this sprocket here will line up with this sprocket here, and that's how I know I'm right where I belong. And then there's a chain that goes in here, which is in the toolbox. There's a toolbox up on here. Got a few accessories in there. So get at it while we got plenty of daylight. Okay, your pin's right by your foot. You're gonna have to kind of get yourself down in there. And the reason I got good at this, because my dad was a very large man in his older years. He'd have us boys doing just this type of stuff all the time. He'd just manage us. So that's how you learn, by doing it. Yeah, this is loose already. How's your stand? Yeah, oh, mine's still got weight on it. There. I got it. And we'll have to remember to snug these up later. What do you got a cotter pin on yours? Yep. This one's got a nice hole. Okay, that all went together so far pretty good. See, now I put this rod here. This rod holds the cob elevator. There's a stand back there we got to take out yet, but so you're going to get your rod into that hole by your fingers there. That helps support the cob elevator. So last year, this time, we did put a video together of this. Maybe you'll see a few things different from this year, but you can also go back to that one. It's a 50. This is what they call number 60. That's a number 60. Yeah, there. Now you got a link in that one? Yeah, you do. So this is probably just one that would replace that one. Because not very often, but I will lose this chain, and then if I can't find it, usually you can tell because your cob elevator, everything stops back there. So that's only in the high yielding stuff. Like, yeah. You know, on a good year, like 230 bushel corn. Well, yeah, this picker, what do you think the bushels were when this was built? 100, 110? Now we're putting 200 bushel yield through this thing. It can be a little trick. That's why every farmer carries some kind of jackknife. And it's got to have the church key on it. No, here. I'm just showing it off. You don't want to use your tool, huh? I got to put this down so I can show these guys. See, this is here full of little chaff. My dad would call that church key. Every old guy had that with those bib overhauls. He had one of these in his pocket. And there you go. I'll hand you this when you... Make sure everything's nice and clean so it's in there nice. So far so good. Front half is usually the trickier half. And I see some raccoon manure up here, so who knows what kind of family of critters we got living in that cob elevator. I've had it before where I couldn't get it running and I found a whole nest in there. Everybody moved out already, but see, then in here, this part is a little longer. They added in this part here. I think, what do you got there? Maybe 10 inches. So some tractors, you didn't need that in there extended. So the bigger tractors that were getting mounted on here, then they started, and then this bracket here gets switched out. For instance, if you got a bigger tractor, still had the same picker, you probably had to buy that extension and you could still use your picker with your bigger tractor. But this one here is very straight. There's nothing bent up on it. The guys I bought it from were very good at caring for their stuff. Then they added this step in here. I think I'm third owner of this picker. There was a neighbor in the valley, only used it like 1 or 2 years, then he ended up getting a combine. Then another neighbor bought it and he had it for quite a long time, till 2010, then they sold it to me. And then back here, this was made by the first guy that owned it. You pull this rope, that goes up there where you're sitting, and then this bar slides over to here. And then that pin would come down on this side of that. And then same thing there. So that would be the side heel hitch. Now if we were up in the shop there, we'd have our floor jack here. We would probably bypass some of these type of things. We try not to get any sand on any of this stuff. It's no fun trying to make everything work again. Okay, let it down. There, and that's our elevator stand. Both these pickers are identical. This one here wasn't cared for nearly as well as that one before I got it. And I believe that one has probably picked more than double the corn this one has picked, but it's kept up very well. So this one here, I think certain components aren't really wore out as bad, but she does have a few small issues. So, but it would pick corn if I needed to. We've had them both on many different times, so stick with the one we know is a little better.
Yeah, but this one's still got a full year guarantee.
Kind of quite the gimmick, ain't it, when your harvest time is usually only a month or so. Few zerks we're gonna grease. Hook some stuff over again.
Wore out.
50 years old and it's actually wore out. That full year warranty, we're gonna have to look that up.
Call up ACO. That's probably who would own this company now. Who bought it along the way.
I would bet whoever's in charge of any of that stuff wouldn't have any idea what we're talking about. They'd probably hang up on us. We'd be hung out to dry.
Try it from the other way. It's a tight fit. He's making every inch count.
Why don't I snug up that sum? We're just not lined up as square as we should be. We'll get some stuff in the way there. I'm not able to get in here like I wanted to, but
That should help with the other side now.
you want to lift? Or do we need a bar or something here? You're right. Okay. Ratchet's right there. Yes, now it's cylinder time.
Okay, we got our brackets on. Now we're gonna put our cylinders on. Get those lined up. Hopefully that goes smooth. Yeah, I'm getting that in.
Now if you go up, yeah,
Yeah,
there you go. Then you can get your pin lined up.
Okay.
You can get the punch for the back side some while you're pushing on the front side.
We're hoping he can shimmy on out of here. There you go. You're clearing back here now. There, now the little built-in jacks are up and out of the way. Yeah, I think last year this bay was empty with straw, so
Yeah,
it made it a little easier.
Difference. That's really our only big issue. We just didn't have much room to work here, to turn things out of here. But
Otherwise, it went okay.
yeah, I think if we were lined up more square, and that's the trouble with these things. If everything is square and everything's level and flat. But see, sometimes what happens is if course of the summer, I'm backing some equipment in here. I happen to bump it a little bit. It slides just a little bit different than it was when it was took off, and it ends up interfering. But it ain't that we couldn't get it. It's just a little more of a pry it this way and that way until you fit it.
Even last year, getting those pieces that went into those two brackets, the mounting bracket, I remember there was 3 of us, and we were all sitting on it or jumping on it trying to get it.
It's just lining things up. It ain't a bad setup. I think if this was all cemented out, we had a little more room to work in here. That's how it goes, you know. You gotta move more stuff out of the way to get it. You don't know how far you need to go. But all in all, I would think this is okay. We knew we were gonna get her. We didn't have anything broke or bent. Be all right. I'm getting more concerned about the crop conditions when it's time to get going. How the corn's gonna go through there, and we're gonna be progressive that way. Right now, it's just time.
Speaking of that, I haven't mentioned them yet. The date. It's October 13th.
Is it 13 today?
Yeah. So that's a date of when we're doing this, and you foresee another week and a half, 2 weeks before we start picking?
Well, I mean, the weather's everything, but I'm guessing, yeah. I mean, we've had years where it seems like anywhere between the 10th of October to the end of October. And I've had years we were into the first week of November.
And it's a later year, so it probably will
a little bit.
It'll probably be closer to November.
But I think our forecast seems decent. It's sunnier and drier.
Yeah, it's still dry.
It's just, it doesn't really matter if we have to wait another week as long as we get the weather when the time does come. So we're going to want to wait until it's, I don't know, I like to see 19, 18, 19. Those round cribs aren't quite as forgiving. Those double, like the double wood cribs that are long and thin where you got the alley in the middle, those are usually your best.
Yeah, you could have wind blowing right
You
through
can
it.
cheat a little more, and it's wood, and especially when they're up. The thing with the round ones is the vent is in the middle. So you got to get air to get to that, which we do got them tubes underneath, but it's not nearly as good that way.
Yep. And when it comes to picking corn versus shelling corn you want to be a bit drier than that even. But when it comes to picking, so you don't lose so much, you want it a little wetter, so it kind of holds on to that.
Yeah, there's a fine line there, especially with pickers, because the corn back in the day. Now I remember back in the 80s. Even into the 90s, there was a column when you pick your varieties that would say compatible for picking, which meant it would husk well, and then it wouldn't shell so bad, because very few of these pickers had stripping plates. Some did. So if you get it too dry, you get more shelling, but then you know your corn's going to keep. You get it too wet, you can't undo it and dry it again.
Yep.
So the bigger thing is if you picked it a little bit on the wetter side, if you get cold, blustery, dry weather, from that point on throughout the fall and into the early winter, it usually is going to cure. So yeah, you can cheat a little bit with your crib. So you got your high moisture. Well, there you want to, I don't know, what do they do?
High moisture is anywhere, I think, from 25 to 30.
Yeah.
But it depends on how they're keeping it too. Like some guys are grinding it up right away and putting it in a pile, and other guys are putting it in a harvester silo.
So harvester's probably a little bit less of an issue because it's so sealed. And then, you get your dry grain. Now you want it low as you can get it, probably because you don't want to have to pay drying. Where do they want it? They want it at 15, 16?
I think there's a fine line there, too, because you want to have as much weight as possible. So then you got your bushels are higher or whatever, your weight.
They go by weight.
But you don't want to get docked for being too wet. So that's kind of the same thing there. I know it's more fussy with soybeans.
Almost all the crops, like he baled hay, like hay, we buy hay off a truck. You want it super dry, get it down to 10%. You're not buying water, so that way they try to get their harvest in that window.
Yep.
And that's not always easy. And this time of the year, I remember back in '91. I want to know if some of you guys can remember this, but we bought this farm in '91, and it snowed on Halloween night. It snowed like 8 inches, and I remember within, I don't know, a day and a half later, we brought all the cattle in. I had heifers on pasture by my dad's. I mean, that was it. There was no harvesting, no bedding, no nothing from that point on. It kind of warmed up, but it just was wet and sloppy. And then the Saturday before Thanksgiving of that same year, it must have snowed like 2.5 feet. Winter set in. And I remember even between Halloween and Thanksgiving, we didn't have any fence around the barnyard yet. I remember digging fence holes around the barnyard so I'd have some kind of place to contain my cattle, because to keep them a little closer to the barn, being that they were unfamiliar with my yard. And I was to scrape the snow away, dig the hole, and then get the dirt back in before it would freeze. It was crazy, but that's how we did it. And I didn't really think too hard that was that abnormal to have that, because I was quite young yet. But then as the years went on, I remember a lot of the guys that are older than me talking about that. Yeah, that was one of them years.
Last year or 2 years ago, it snowed about this time, but it went away right away.
Yeah, that's the thing. The ground is warm yet. It could snow, and it
snowed a lot 2 years ago. It was dumped, and it was about this time. It was the middle of October. And 3-4 days, and then it was all gone.
It was gone, and it got wet and muddy. But that's the thing. It's once we get to that November 1st, we realize that it could go. You could get good all the way to Thanksgiving, or you could get nothing done.
Can't take the time you have for granted. You better just get at it. If the crop's
almost there, and your forecasts don't look too great, you just go get it. Because in this area, especially if we leave a crop out there over winter, the wildlife really takes advantage of it too. Then of course you get some loss from just that stalks falling over and some of that too. And then the other thing is even like where are we going to go with all our manure? We usually rely on our bottoms for hauling all our winter manures, and if you got a crop in there yet,
you can't tie it up all winter.
You can't. You may have to figure something out. But so far, we've always made it work. That's the joy of farming. It's the unknown. There's a lot of hope. but there's so much uncertainty.
Yeah, that's the risk you take.
Nobody knows. I'll never forget how many times that they come up with these big predictions where you're going to super wet or super dry, a lot of snow, super cold or wetter or drier summer or winter. Nobody seemed to quite get it right, which is the best part, that nobody really knows. So it gives you a lot of hope.
But yeah, that's mounting the corn picker for the harvest season of 2022. So stay on the lookout for those videos because they'll be coming out soon.
And we made one last year too. I don't know.
Last year's corn picking extravaganza.
And this year, and then of course we had a couple of them from picking, and then you even got a drone out the one time.
Yeah,
that really was kind of neat. That is history. That is something that years ago you could have had a picture or two, but you could have never documented that the way that is.
Anyways, thanks for coming along with us. Leave comments down below what you thought, and if you have any more questions for us, make sure to check out our other videos.